Captain Emily Foster stood at the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, her eyes fixed on the massive view screen before her. The darkness of space was lit up by hundreds of enemy ships, their hulls gleaming with strange alien metals. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Earth's fate on her shoulders. "Status report," she called out, her voice steady despite the pressure. First Officer David Miller looked up from his console, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screens. 200 Council warships have just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Captain. They're forming a battle circle around us. The Defiant was humanity's newest and most advanced battleship. While other Earth ships had fallen in the previous battles, the Defiant remained undefeated. Its hull shimmered with a special coating that could change color like a chameleon, and its weapons were a unique mix of human and alien technology. "Engineering, how are our systems looking?" Foster asked through the ship's comm system. Chief Engineer Robert Wilson's voice came through clearly. "All systems are running at peak performance, Captain. The new shield modifications are ready. Those aliens won't know what hit them." Foster allowed herself a small smile. The Defiant wasn't just any battleship. It was humanity's greatest achievement. The ship combined Earth's best technology with reverse-engineered alien systems they'd gathered over the years. But what made it special wasn't just its advanced weapons or shields. It was the human crew who operated it. "Message coming in from the Council fleet," announced Communications Officer Jane Cooper. Her fingers flew over the controls as she decoded the transmission. The main screen flickered to life, showing the stern face of a Vaxian, a tall, gray-skinned alien with 4 eyes and rigid plate-like armor growing from its skin. High Commander Zexthar of the Galactic Council looked down at them with obvious disgust. "Human vessel," the alien's voice boomed through the speakers. "Your species has been declared too dangerous to join the galactic community. Your unpredictable nature and aggressive tendencies make you a threat to galactic peace. Surrender now, and we will ensure your planet's population is properly contained and controlled." Foster stood up from her captain's chair, her back straight, and her green eyes flashing with determination. The bridge crew watched her, drawing strength from their captain's confidence. "Liberty," Foster called out to the ship's AI. "Scan their fleet. Find me their weaknesses." A gentle female voice responded from the ship's speakers. "Scanning, Captain. I detect varying shield configurations among their ships. They're not as unified as they appear." "Good." Foster nodded. She turned back to the screen. "High Commander, let me be clear. Earth will not surrender. We have tried to be peaceful. We have tried to cooperate. But you and your council have decided that being different means being wrong. That being human means being dangerous." She took a step forward, her reflection visible in the massive screen. "You're right about one thing. Humans are dangerous, but only to those who threaten our freedom. You've destroyed our other ships, killed our people, and now you demand our surrender." She shook her head. "Not today." First Officer Miller checked his readings again. "Captain, they're charging weapons. All 200 ships." "Good," Foster said calmly. "Let them come." "Tactical, are the new torpedo systems ready?" "Yes, Captain," Lisa Chen replied from the tactical station, her fingers hovering over the controls. "Quantum torpedoes are armed and ready. Point defense systems are online." Foster sat back in her chair, a sense of calm settling over her. This was what humans did best: face impossible odds and find a way to win. The Defiant might be just one ship against 200, but it had something the Council fleet didn't: a crew that fought differently, that could adapt and improvise. "All hands," Foster's voice rang through the ship-wide comm. "This is your captain speaking. The Galactic Council thinks they know what humans are capable of. Today, we're going to show them how wrong they are. Battle stations, everyone. Let's make history." The red alert klaxon began to sound throughout the ship. Crew members rushed to their positions, systems powered up, and weapons came online. The Defiant's engines hummed with power, ready for the fight of their lives. As the enemy fleet began to move, Foster gave her first command of the battle. Tactical. Initiate attack pattern Delta. Let's show them why you should never corner a human. The battle for Earth's freedom was about to begin, and Captain Emily Foster intended to prove that sometimes one ship was all you needed to change the galaxy. High Counselor Zexthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory. His 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the lone human ship on his view screen. The vessel was small compared to his fleet's massive warships, yet it refused to back down. "These humans are even more foolish than we thought," he said to his second-in-command. "One ship against our fleet. Their arrogance will be their downfall." Around the Defiant, the Council's fleet formed a perfect sphere of destruction. The Vaxian warships made up the front line, their purple hulls covered in battle scars. Behind them, the sleek silver ships of the Mindari waited, their telepathic crews ready to break the humans' will. The Carixan vessels hovered at the rear, their advanced computers prepared to hack and disable the human ship. "Begin the attack," Zexthar ordered. "Show them the price of defiance." The first wave of Vaxian ships opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams cut through space toward the Defiant. But something unexpected happened. The human ship's hull suddenly changed color, becoming almost mirror-like. The energy beams bounced off, some hitting the Council's own ships. On the Defiant's bridge, Captain Foster allowed herself a small grin. "Looks like they didn't expect our adaptive shield technology. Liberty, how are the systems holding up?" "Shields at 98%, Captain," the AI responded. "The enemy's weapon frequency has been analyzed and countered." First Officer Miller watched the enemy fleet's movements on his screen. They're switching tactics. The Mindari ships are moving forward. The silver Mindari vessels glowed with psychic energy. Their crews were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to break enemy crews with telepathic attacks. But again, something went wrong. "Captain," one of the Mindari commanders reported to Zexthar, "we cannot reach their minds. There's some kind of barrier. We've never encountered anything like it." Zexthar slammed his armored fist on his chair. "Impossible. How can they block your powers?" Back on the Defiant, Engineer Wilson's voice came through the comm. "The neural dampeners are working perfectly, Captain. Looks like our research into blocking telepathic attacks paid off." "Good work, Robert," Foster replied. "Now let's show them what we can do. Lisa, target the nearest Vaxian ship. Fire quantum torpedoes." Tactical Officer Chen pressed her controls, and the Defiant launched its first attack. Bright blue torpedoes shot out, moving in patterns that seemed to make no sense. The Vaxian ship tried to dodge, but the torpedoes suddenly changed direction at impossible angles. They struck the alien vessel's engines, causing them to overload. "How?" Zexthar demanded as he watched the Vaxian ship drift powerless. "Their weapons. They defy the laws of physics." "That's the point," Foster said quietly on her bridge. "Liberty, begin Phase 2. The Defiant's engines flared, and the ship began to move. But instead of following standard combat patterns, it weaved through space in ways that made no sense to the Council commanders. It was as if the ship was dancing between their formations, breaking up their carefully planned strategies. The Carixan ships moved forward, their advanced AI systems trying to hack into the Defiant. But Liberty was ready for them. The ship's computer systems altered their code faster than the alien AIs could attack, creating defenses that had never existed before. "Captain," Liberty announced, "I've traced their hack attempt back to their source. Should I show them why mixing human creativity with AI was a good idea?" "Do it," Foster ordered. Suddenly, half of the Carixan ships lost power, their systems overwhelmed by Liberty's counterattack. In the confusion, the Defiant struck again, its weapons finding weak points that shouldn't have existed in the Council ship's defenses. On his flagship, Zexthar watched in growing horror as his perfect battle plan fell apart. The human ship wasn't fighting like any vessel he had ever seen. It wasn't following any of the standard combat doctrines that all civilized species use. "Order the fleet to fall back and regroup," he commanded. "We need to rethink our strategy." But as his ships tried to create distance, the Defiant pressed its advantage. More quantum torpedoes launched, each one finding its target with impossible accuracy. "Send word to the Council," Zexthar said grimly. Tell them we may have underestimated these humans." On the Defiant, Captain Foster watched the enemy fleet's confusion with satisfaction. "Send a message to all Council ships," she ordered. "Tell them, this is just the beginning." The battle was far from over, but humanity had made its point. They weren't just another species to be conquered. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. The battle had been raging for 2 hours, and the U.S. Defiant was proving to be more than just a tough opponent. Tactical Officer Lisa Chen sat at her station, her fingers flying over the controls as she fed new combat patterns into the ship's targeting systems. "Captain," she called out, "I've noticed something about their attack formations. They always follow the same basic patterns. It's like they're reading from a rulebook." Captain Foster leaned forward in her chair. "Can you use that against them?" "Already working on it," Chen replied with a small smile. "Liberty and I have created a new targeting algorithm. They won't be able to predict where our shots are coming from." The Defiant's weapons spoke again, this time firing in seemingly random directions. The Council ships moved to dodge in their standard patterns, only to find the shots curving around to hit them from behind. In engineering, Robert Wilson was pushing the ship's systems to their limits. The hybrid technology they'd created by mixing human innovation with alien tech was performing better than anyone had expected. He watched as the energy readings climbed higher and higher. "Engineering to bridge," he called out. "Captain, I've got an idea. These aliens think in straight lines. Their ships, their tactics, everything. But we humans, we think in curves and chaos." "What are you suggesting, Robert?" Foster asked. "Let me redirect power from our secondary systems into the shield modulators. We can create a bubble of twisted space around us. Their sensors won't be able to make sense of it." Foster didn't hesitate. "Do it." The Defiant's hull began to shimmer, and the space around it seemed to bend and twist. On the enemy ship's sensors, the human vessel seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. The Mindari ships made another attempt to break through to the human crew's minds. Their most powerful telepaths gathered together, focusing their mental energy on the lone Earth ship, but instead of finding vulnerable minds to control, they encountered something that shocked them. "High Commander," a Mindari captain reported to Zexthar, "their minds. They're too chaotic. Every time we try to establish a connection, their thoughts shift and change. It's like trying to grab smoke." Liberty, the Defiant's AI, was learning and adapting with each passing minute. Unlike the rigid AI systems of the Corixan, Liberty had been programmed to think like a human, creatively and unpredictably. "Captain," Liberty announced, "I've analyzed their shield frequencies. They update them in a mathematical sequence. I can predict their next frequency shift and time our weapons to hit at exactly the right moment." Foster nodded. "Every strength they have is built on order and rules. And that's their weakness. Fire when ready, Liberty." The Defiant's quantum torpedoes struck 3 Council ships simultaneously, their shields failing at the exact moment of impact. The damaged vessels drifted out of formation, creating gaps in the Council's defense screen. First Officer Miller studied the tactical display. "Look at their formation, Captain. They're so focused on maintaining their perfect battle sphere that they're not protecting their damaged ships." "That's because they don't expect anyone to help the weak," Foster replied. "But that's not how humans work. Lisa, target the ships nearest to their damaged vessels. Let's show them what happens when you leave your friends behind." The Defiant dove through the gaps in the Council formation, its weapons striking the ships that had left their damaged allies exposed. The perfect sphere began to break apart as more ships took damage and drifted away. On his flagship, Zexthar was beginning to feel something he hadn't experienced in centuries: fear, Nothing in his 1,000 years of military experience had prepared him for this. "They're not fighting fair," he shouted. "This isn't how space combat is supposed to work." His second-in-command looked worried. "Sir, some of the younger crews are asking questions. They want to know why we can't adapt our tactics like the humans." "Because that's not how civilized species fight," Zexstar snapped. But even as he said it, he could see more of his ships falling to the Defiant's unconventional attacks. Back on the Defiant, Captain Foster watched as the enemy fleet's formation continued to crumble. "Send a message to all council ships," she ordered. "Tell them, in nature, the most successful species isn't the strongest or the most numerous. It's the one that can adapt." The battle was turning, not just because of superior technology or tactics, but because of the human factor, the ability to think differently, to break rules, and to never give up even when outnumbered. The Council was about to learn that their greatest weakness was believing they had no weaknesses at all. The stars turned into streaks of light as the U.S. Defiant executed another impossible turn. Captain Foster had given Engineer Wilson permission to push the engines beyond their normal limits, and the ship was moving in ways that defied conventional space combat tactics. "They're trying to box us in again," First Officer Miller reported, watching as the Council ships attempted to reform their battle sphere. "But their formations are getting sloppy. Some ships aren't following orders anymore." Foster nodded, noticing the same thing. More and more Council ships were hesitating before following commands. The perfect unity of the alien fleet was starting to crack. "Liberty," Foster called out, "show me the status of their fleet." A holographic display appeared in the center of the bridge, showing the positions of all ships. At least 20 Council vessels were now badly damaged, and many others were moving out of position. "Captain," Liberty's calm voice reported, "I'm picking up unusual communications between Council ships. They appear to be arguing among themselves." Engineer Wilson's voice came through the comm system. "Bridge, you need to see this. I've got our experimental weapons system ready. Remember those mining charges we modified? The ones that create temporary wormholes?" Foster asked. "Exactly. We can use them to split their fleet apart. They'll never expect us to tear space itself." Foster didn't even need to think about it. "Do it, Robert. Lissa, target their command ships with the wormhole charges." Tactical Officer Chen's fingers danced across her console as she locked onto the targets. The Defiant launched a spread of what looked like normal missiles. The Council ships didn't even bother to dodge. Their shields could handle standard explosives. But these weren't standard explosives. The charges detonated, and space itself seemed to tear open. Small wormholes appeared throughout the Council formation, their gravity pulling ships in different directions. The aliens' perfect formation shattered as ships struggled against the unexpected gravitational forces. "By the ancestors," Zexstar shouted from his flagship bridge. "What kind of weapons are these humans using?" He watched helplessly as his fleet was pulled apart, their carefully planned formations now useless. The Mindari ships, already frustrated by their inability to affect human minds, began to retreat to a safer distance. Their captains had never faced an enemy they couldn't mentally dominate, and it frightened them. "Sir," a Vaxian captain called to Zexstar, "the Mindari are retreating without orders. Our formation is falling apart." Back on the Defiant, Chief Engineer Wilson was monitoring the wormhole's effect. "Captain, the spatial tiers will seal themselves in about 5 minutes. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." Foster stood from her captain's chair. "This is our chance. Liberty, analyze their broken formation. Find me their weakest point." Analysis complete, Liberty responded instantly. "Their command ships are exposed. The defending screen is full of gaps. Lisa, plot us a course through those gaps. Robert, give us everything the engines have got. It's time to take the fight to their leaders." The Defiant's engines flared bright blue as Wilson pushed them to maximum power. The ship shot forward, weaving through the chaos of scattered Council vessels. Some tried to fire, But their shots went wide as the human ship moved in ways their targeting computers couldn't predict. Multiple ships are breaking ranks, Miller reported with a hint of satisfaction. They're not even trying to maintain formation anymore. The Council's mighty fleet, which had started the battle as a perfect sphere of 200 ships, was now scattered across space. Some ships drifted powerless, others moved in random directions, and many were simply trying to stay away from the unpredictable human vessel. "Send a message to all Council ships," Foster ordered. "Tell them we're willing to accept their surrender. Any ship that powers down its weapons will not be fired upon." To everyone's surprise, several Council ships immediately powered down their weapons. They were mostly younger crews, ones who had seen how the rigid thinking of their leaders had failed against human adaptability. On his flagship, Zexthar watched in horror as his fleet fell apart. "This is impossible. We outnumber them 200 to 1. "Numbers mean nothing," his second-in-command said quietly, "when your enemy can think in ways you never imagined." The battle was reaching its turning point. The Council's greatest strength, its unity and order, had become its greatest weakness when faced with human unpredictability. And now, that weakness was about to cost them everything they had built. Captain Foster stood at the center of her bridge, watching as more Council ships began powering down their weapons. What had started as a few brave crews had turned into a steady stream of surrenders. But the core of the Council fleet, led by Zexthar, wasn't giving up yet. "Liberty," Foster called out. "Scan the enemy communications. Let's see what's really happening in their ranks." "Interesting findings, Captain," the eye replied. "The Corixan ships are arguing with the Vaxins. It seems they blame each other for the failing battle plan. The Mindari have completely withdrawn from the fight." First Officer Miller looked up from his station. "Captain, I think I understand their weakness now. The Council species don't trust each other. They only work together because they're afraid of their leaders." Foster smiled. "Then let's give them something new to think about. Open a channel to all Council ships, including the ones that surrendered." Lisa Chen quickly set up the communication. Foster's voice rang out across space, reaching every ship in the scattered fleet. "This is Captain Emily Foster of the U.S. Defiant. To those ships that have surrendered, thank you for your wisdom. To those still fighting, look around you. Your perfect formation is broken. Your allies are leaving. Ask yourselves, why do you fight for leaders who sacrifice your ships without care?" On his flagship, Zexthar roared in anger as he heard Foster's words. "Cut off that transmission." But it was too late. His crews had heard the human captain, and they were listening. "The Council tells you humans are dangerous because we're different," Foster continued. "But look at what one human ship has done today. We didn't win because we're stronger. We won because we think freely, because we question orders that don't make sense, because we value every life, even our enemies." Just then, a Corixan ship sent out a distress signal. Its engines had been damaged in the chaos, and it was drifting toward a dangerous radiation field. The closest Council ships stayed in formation, following their strict battle protocols. "Lisa, plot an intercept course," Foster ordered without hesitation. "Robert, get ready to extend our shields around their ship." The Defiant broke off from its attack run and raced toward the damaged Corixan vessel. Council commanders watched in confusion as their enemy moved to save one of their ships. The human vessel reached the Corixan ship just in time, extending its advanced shields to protect both ships from the radiation. Engineer Wilson worked quickly to help stabilize the alien vessel's systems. "Why?" the Corixan captain asked over the comm. "We are your enemies. Our protocols say damaged ships must be abandoned in battle." "That's the difference between us and your Council," Foster replied. "We don't abandon anyone, friend or foe." This act of mercy did what hundreds of weapons couldn't do. It broke the Council's control over its fleet. More ships began powering down their weapons, and some even turned their ships to face Zexthar's flagship. "Captain," Liberty announced, "I'm detecting new communications among the Council ships. They're sharing information about Council corruption. Hidden files are being broadcast between ships. Miller leaned forward at his station. It looks like some Council officers have been secretly gathering evidence. The Councilors have been lying to their own people for centuries. On different Council ships, crews watched in shock as hidden files revealed the truth. The Council hadn't banned humans because they were dangerous. They had banned them because humans encouraged others to think independently. "Send another message," Foster ordered. "Tell them that Earth offers friendship to any species that wants to think for itself. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it together, as equals." Zexthar watched helplessly as his remaining loyal ships decreased by the minute. His perfect military operation had turned into a revolution, sparked by one human ship that refused to follow the rules. "Captain," Chen reported with a smile, "more ships are responding to our offer. They're asking for permission to approach and establish peaceful contact." Foster nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. What had started as humanity's last stand was becoming the galaxy's first taste of real freedom. The Council's mighty fleet hadn't been defeated by superior weapons or tactics alone. It had been transformed by the power of human ideas. "Send to all ships," Foster said. "Tell them, welcome to a new way of thinking." First Officer David Miller stood before the viewscreen on the Defiance Bridge, speaking to the leaders of various alien ships. After the rescue of the Corixan vessel, more and more Council ships had requested to open diplomatic channels. The bridge had turned from a battle station into a center of peaceful revolution. "Your Council has lied to all of us for centuries," a Corixan captain said, his holographic image flickering slightly. "They kept our species separate, made us compete against each other. They told us humans were savages, but look who came to save our ship when our own allies abandoned us." Captain Foster sat in her command chair, watching as history unfolded before her. Liberty was helping translate dozens of alien languages at once, allowing free communication between species for the first time in Council history. "Captain," Engineer Wilson called from below decks, "you need to see this. The Corixan engineers I'm working with just shared their technical database with us. The Council has been holding back technological advances from its member species. They've kept everyone weak on purpose." On his flagship, now surrounded by ships that once served him, High Commander Zexthar received message after message of ships declaring their independence from Council rule. His own crew was beginning to question their loyalty. "You don't understand what you're doing," Zexthar shouted over the fleet-wide channel. "Without the Council's guidance, there will be chaos." "No," Foster responded calmly. "There will be freedom. There will be cooperation based on choice, not fear. Isn't that worth the risk?" Lisa Chen's console suddenly lit up with new readings. "Captain, multiple ships are moving to protect us. They're forming a defensive screen around the Defiant." It was true. Ships from different species, ones that had been enemies just hours ago, were working together. They moved with the same precision as before, but now it was by choice rather than command. A Mindari ship captain, who had earlier retreated from the battle, returned to open communications. "We have seen inside human minds now," she said, her telepathic message translated by Liberty. "Not to control, but to understand. They dream of a galaxy where all species work together, where differences make us stronger, not divided." Robert Wilson had moved between ships, helping repair battle damage. He worked alongside alien engineers, sharing human innovation while learning from their experience. Together, they found ways to combine their technologies that the Council had always forbidden. "The Council was right about one thing," Wilson reported back to the bridge. "Humans are dangerous. Dangerous to anyone who rules through fear and lies." First Officer Miller organized the growing coalition of freed ships. The Defiance Bridge became a symbol of the new order forming in space. Species that had never worked together were now sharing ideas, solving problems, and building trust. "We're receiving requests from planetary governments," Liberty announced. "Word of what happened here has spread. Colonies and member worlds are declaring their independence from the Council." Foster stood up, looking at the faces of various alien captains on her view screen. Then let's give them something better than the Council. Not an empire built on fear, but an alliance built on cooperation. Every species equal, every voice heard. Even some of Zextar's most loyal ships began to turn away. His own second-in-command stepped forward on the bridge of the flagship. "High Commander," the officer said firmly, "our crew stands with the humans. We've seen a better way today. Will you join us in building it or cling to the old lies?" Zextar looked around his bridge, seeing determination in every face. His crew had tasted freedom of thought, and they would never go back. In that moment, the mighty High Commander of the Council fleet realized he had lost not just a battle, but an entire way of life. "Captain Foster," he said heavily, I request permission to approach and discuss terms." On the Defiant, the bridge crew shared quiet looks of triumph. They had come to make a last stand for Earth, but instead, they had helped free the galaxy. "Permission granted," Foster replied. "Welcome to the revolution, Commander." As alien ships moved together in new formations, their crews freely sharing ideas and hopes for the future, humanity had proved something incredible. Sometimes, the greatest victories don't come from destroying your enemies, but from turning them into friends. Liberty's voice summed it up perfectly. "Captain, I'm detecting something new in the communication patterns between ships. I believe the humans call it hope." 2 weeks after the battle that changed the galaxy, the U.S. Defiant floated in space near Earth. Around it, ships from dozens of alien species gathered for a historic meeting. The bridge of the human battleship had been transformed into a conference room, with holographic projectors showing representatives from hundreds of worlds. Captain Emily Foster stood before them all, no longer just the commander of Earth's last battleship, but now a symbol of change throughout the galaxy. Beside her stood former High Commander Zextar, who had become one of the strongest supporters of the new alliance. The old council ruled through fear and separation. Foster addressed the gathered representatives. "They kept us apart because they knew that together we would be stronger than they could control. Today, we changed that." First Officer Miller displayed a document on the main screen. The charter for a new organization. The Terran Cooperative. Not an empire, not a council, but a true alliance of equals. "Every species brings something unique to this alliance," Miller explained. "Human creativity, Corixan technology, Mindari wisdom, Vaxian strength. Together, we're more than we ever could be alone." In engineering, Robert Wilson worked with a team of alien engineers. They had already begun sharing technologies that the Council had kept separate for centuries. The Defiant itself was being upgraded with improvements from a dozen different worlds. "Look at this," Wilson said excitedly over the comm. "The Corixan power systems combined with human innovation. We've just doubled our engine efficiency, and that's just the beginning." Liberty, the Defiant's AI, had also evolved. Connected to alien computer systems, she had grown in ways no one expected, yet she remained fundamentally human in her approach to problems. "Captain," Liberty announced, "I'm detecting signs of celebration on thousands of worlds. News of the cooperative is spreading. People are calling this the start of a new age." Lisa Chen looked up from her tactical station, which now showed friendly ships where once there had been enemies. "Multiple ships requesting permission to dock, Captain. They want to start joint training exercises, learning from each other's strengths." On the main screen, representatives from different worlds took turns speaking. A Mindari elder's thoughts were translated for all to hear. "For millennia, we thought our telepathy made us superior. Now we understand. True strength comes from sharing our minds, not controlling others." A Corixan scientist spoke next. "Our computers can calculate 1,000,000 solutions, but humans show us how to find the ones that weren't in our equations. Together, we will advance faster than ever before." Even the proud Vaxians had changed. Their new leader, speaking from their homeworld, declared, "We thought order meant forcing everyone to be the same, The humans showed us that real order comes from working together while staying true to ourselves. Former High Commander Xthar stepped forward. I commanded the fleet sent to contain humanity. Instead, humanity freed us all. The Council taught us that differences lead to chaos. Earth showed us that differences lead to strength. Captain Foster looked around at her crew, at the aliens who had become friends, at the future they were building together. The Defiant was supposed to be Earth's last stand. Instead, it became the galaxy's first step toward real freedom. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we offered something better than fear. We offered hope. As if to emphasize her words, more ships arrived from distant worlds, each bringing new ideas, new technologies, and new dreams of what they could accomplish together. Message from Earth Command, Captain Chen reported with a smile. They say you did it. You not only saved Earth, you saved the galaxy. Foster shook her head. No, we all did it. Every species that chose to think differently. Every crew that chose cooperation over conflict. Every world that chose hope over fear. This is just the beginning. The document was signed, the Terran Cooperative was born, and a new chapter in galactic history began. The story of how one human battleship defeated the Galactic Council would be told for generations. But it wasn't the weapons or the tactics that had won the day. It was the simple human belief that everyone deserves a chance to be free, to think for themselves, and to work together as equals. Liberty, Foster said quietly, send a message to all ships and all worlds. Tell them, welcome to the future. Let's build it together.